hundreds of people who have sent messages of support to us.
Hey everybody, welcome to Narativ Live. I'm really excited to welcome Laura Goldman to the show. Ghislaine was talking to the press after her father died. Then she moved to America, and that's where we were told she met Jeffrey Epstein.
I think she met him earlier, but not really. Anybody who was anybody, Robert Maxwell met. And he had a really great party when he was coming over to America on a beautiful boat, his boat, the Lady Ghislaine, when he bought the New York Daily News?
Daily News,
right,
I think,
yes,
yeah.
Right. So he already knew a lot of people, and Jeffrey could have been in that circle or whatever, but their relationship didn't really click until she was in the United States.
So the story, as I was told by Ari Ben Menashe, who was Maxwell's supposed handler when he worked for the Mossad, he is a consultant now. He works for a variety of different people. I went up to Montreal, and I was the first person to report that I could confirm that Epstein was, in fact, an agent for Israeli military intelligence, and Ghislaine as well.
Was she part of the business too? Was she involved in what you were doing over there?
No. But later on,
Yeah.
she got involved with Israeli intelligence together with him,
Right.
but not in this arms deal, in Iran knowing business.
Would you say she was an agent as well? Was she someone
Yes.
working for Israeli intelligence?
Oh, definitely.
Military intelligence as well?
Yes. And so they found a niche for themselves, blackmailing American and other political figures.
So Maxwell introduces you. He says to you, here's this guy Jeffrey Epstein who I know from around.
And your Israeli bosses have approved him.
Oh, okay.
Already approved him.
So it came down from up above.
Miss Maxwell
Ghislaine, yeah.
fell for him.
She wanted to, I don't know where her obsession to marry Jeffrey came from, but it was very early on. So I don't know that story, but it doesn't surprise me. Was he involved in Iran-Contra? If there was money to be made, Maxwell was there.
We're in New York City. It's the 90s. There's a lot of money sloshing around. Ghislaine is hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. She's also hanging out with Donald Trump. They're having a good time together. Tell us a little bit about what you know about that relationship.
First of all, Ghislaine is fun, okay? She's a nice person. All the Maxwells are nice people, okay? I know it doesn't seem like she's nice, and you hear all these horrible stories, but at that time, you would have been hard-pressed to find anyone who didn't like her. Okay. Now, I mean, obviously nobody knew these things that she was doing, and some of them are inexcusable, and threatening people, and physically touching people. If true, all these things are terrible. But she was a lot of fun then. She didn't really work. Her job was to go out at night and recruit and do and whatever. But it was really to recruit a network, not a network of girls, a network of interesting people.
Let me stop you there. So you say that was her job. There was a job given to her by Epstein, or a job given to her by the Israelis?
Her job was to make, yes. Okay, Epstein was supporting her. First, she had a small apartment. Then he got her a house. And her job was to expand his level of influence. What the purpose was, we now know. At the time, it seemed kind of nebulous. And it seemed, it didn't seem like it seemed harmless. Okay, obviously it wasn't.
Was he wealthy then? Was the money from her?
No, she had a very, maybe $100,000 trust fund. Okay. No, he had money then. And, Steve Hoffenberg says that some of it came from him, some of it came from Wexner. So, even before Wexner, he was doing some kind of deals. Some people say he was a bounty hunter. I called him the repo man. Like he would get things back for people.
Right. For billionaires and dictators and whomever.
And countries,
Right.
small little countries.
People like
you know,
Marcos, in fact, people like that. Like,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Peop
So I thought he was a repo man. I never knew he was in finance until people told me he was in finance.
A
And
lot of
I
people
did
didn't.
try. Right. Okay. So I never thought he was, because I did ask him once I found out that he was, what stocks do you like? Whatever. And he had no answers. So I'm not sure he ever was. And he never made any incredible investments. A lot of the hedge funds that he ended up investing in, he sued, like the Bear Stearns mortgage and et cetera.
Right, he worked for Bear
Yeah.
Stearns as well. So tell me a
Yeah.
little bit your impressions of him. I didn't realize you had spent so much time with him.
No, I didn't spend that much time with him. I didn't. I would see him. I wasn't his type.
Yeah.
First of all, I ask a lot of questions. Okay, that's my personality. And I'm very emphatic. Okay, and so I would ask him questions, and he didn't like to answer. And he would kind of look at you and look behind you at some girl's rear end.
Right.
He was always on the hunt. I didn't know why Ghislaine was convinced he would marry her. She kept thinking, if I do one more thing, he'll marry me. She was convinced that he was the guy for her.
You're
She
making
said
it
everybody
sound.
else is boring.
You're making it sound like she's the one who was, she was just so infatuated and so in love with him that
Yeah,
she
she
had
was.
no other. That was the reason. That's the whole driving force behind all these years of being, his networker, as you put it.
Listen, she wanted to marry him. She loved him. Okay. Why did she stay all those years? Okay, you can say that she stayed because she was a spy, which is your theory. You can say she stayed because she was well compensated, whatever. I am telling you that she couldn't give up on the dream of marrying Jeffrey Epstein. She didn't care how much he humiliated her with all those young girls. Okay, she thought that he would grow out of it. She thought that it was like her parents' marriage, where Robert Maxwell stayed with Elizabeth Maxwell, but apparently cheated on her often. She thought that's how aristocrats lived. She she didn't understand in America we didn't do that.
The British can do that sometimes.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's not us, not in America. So this is
Well, you're
interesting.
Canadian, but I meant
Yes.
Israeli, but whatever.
I've got a bunch of different nationalities, so I can claim to be whichever one fits my purposes. And right now, I'm not British, so
Yeah.
it's okay.
No,
But
I just meant
joking. I'm just joking. So the interesting thing for me is that you think she just did all this. She recruited all these women for his pleasure. He felt humiliated. You said she felt humiliated during.
Oh, she knew. I mean, her friends, okay, would try to say to her, look, none of us knew these girls were so young, okay? But we would say, look, what is this? I mean, and she would say, don't worry, I'm his, he will always come back to me. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's not how. Something I couldn't imagine, but she did. She would drop everything. She'd be out with you, and Jeffrey would say he was sick, and she'd run and get chicken soup for him, or whatever. Like,
Did he love her?
I think for many years, I don't know about at the end, he loved her as much as he could love anyone.
Was he selfish? Was he just self-interested? Was he a psychopath? What would you say in terms of self-interest level was?
Well, now that I see all the harm he's done, I have to say he was probably a sociopath. At the time, I just thought he was insecure and thought that he could he needed to humiliate other people to make himself feel better.
So
I guess have you watched Billions?
I do know the show. I don't watch it that
Okay,
often, but I know
okay,
it.
okay. So you put him as Axe on steroids, but Axe at least has some level of security in him. Jeffrey had none. He also was always insecure.
It's so interesting
Now,
because Ari Ben Menashe said the same thing to me, but he didn't say it to me in the same way. But he said to me that when he thinks about why Jeffrey Epstein did all these things, he did it because he wanted to feel powerful, that he felt completely powerless without all that stuff.
Yes.
Which it sounds like, it's a similar kind of sentiment that he...
Yes. That's even better. That's a better way of saying it than I did.
There are two sides of the same coin, because I think what you're saying is that he was insecure. And I think people look at this guy and would think, how could this guy be insecure? He's a multi-billionaire. He's obviously very smart. He's got homes, he's got jets, he's got access to all these people. How could someone like that be insecure? And I guess oftentimes people like that are insecure.
Ghislaine was the same way. And I know people see her as confident and as this and as that. She wasn't. She was a bundle of nerves. All the Maxwells are.
The president, Donald Trump, landed up in the situation, presumably, if the allegations in court were true, with a 13-year-old and Jeffrey Epstein. And that case was, famously dropped by the accuser. Do you believe it? Do you believe that's what happened?
Nothing would surprise me. 13 seems a little young, but nothing would surprise me. I mean, all these girls were too young. I mean, Virginia was what, 17 or 6,
Yeah, 16, I think. You say that Ghislaine is insecure and she's a nice person, but also a human trafficker.
No. The person I knew was nice. The person who abused these women and recruited young girls, that's not a nice person. But the person I knew at that time was nice. Nice people don't recruit underage girls.
No, they don't. So that's where it gets very tricky for people, I think. Even some people might have sympathy.
But I didn't know her that way, and nobody else knew her that way until the arrest. And at the arrest, I had a fight with Isabel and her about it. Like, what the hell is going on here? How could you have done this? You know how I feel about these issues. But I'm saying, until that happened, nobody knew. And nobody knew the extent of it because there was a plea deal.
So it was completely quiet. There was no sense of this from your perspective.
Okay, none. And let me tell you something. What people don't understand is, in 2008, there was no South Beach. No South Beach, okay? So all the wild and crazy stuff was going on in Palm Beach behind gated houses. Okay? There was no way to know that.
Everyone needs their day in court, which it doesn't seem like anyone's going to get in this case. Tell me a little, because right now the situation is for everyone to just be caught up. The cases have mostly been shut down in the United States, per se. In the Virgin Isles, which is a territory of the United States, there is a prosecution going on, and that's going on against the current executors of the estate, Darrell Indyke and Mr. Khan. Now, those two people were involved in a lot of Jeffrey Epstein's stuff. All these illegal crimes, his companies, the ones where he had a company that created DNA or was genetically tracking DNA. He had another company that was piloting all these young girls around the world, basically a human trafficking plane that was called Lolita Express. All these things were illegal enterprises, and the U.S. Virgin Isles Attorney General, Denise George, is prosecuting these two gentlemen.
No, she's not prosecuting him. She's holding up the... I don't think she is.
She's threatening to. She said she would.
She's holding up the distribution of the estate. But last week, 17 of the girls, of the victims, started negotiating. Okay? One of the holdups is the estate has insisted that all the co-conspirators, which includes Ghislaine and includes Sarah and all those other people, be exempt. That if you get money from the estate, you can't sue them. Now, she says that's not fair, but I think you're going to find that the law is going to go once again to the estate because otherwise they can't pay out any money. And the reason is they get the money from the estate, then they sue Ghislaine, and Ghislaine sues the estate.
Right.
So when it's going to be, it'll be a cat chasing a tail. Now, it's a terrible system. As I said earlier in the show, if you want to get justice, go to our house. And if you want to get screwed, go to the courthouse. But get these girls should get money. They deserve it. They deserve it to rebuild their lives, to get psychiatric care for the damage to their reputations, their loss of those critical years for them, education. But, thinking that that justice is getting Ghislaine in jail or Prince Andrew in jail and not taking the money now and moving on doesn't make sense.
But it's still, she is a trafficker of these young girls. She was involved in this networking operation. Surely she should be, if there was any sort of fairness in the world, she should be behind bars.
But she won't be. She was granted immunity in '08. So coulda, woulda, I understand. Look, I was on the phone with a CNN reporter, and she hung up on me when I said Ghislaine's not going to jail. Ghislaine has told me repeatedly she's going to be fine.
She should go to jail. Where's the justice then? Because let's say that her...
But lots of people don't go to jail. Where is R. Kelly? Didn't he just end up in jail? I mean, my point being, the justice system isn't about retribution, okay? It's not fair to poor people. It treats rich people or connected people differently. Is that right? No, okay? No. But that's the system.
But there are people, let me interrupt you there. There are people in the system who let Jeffrey and Ghislaine get away with it. And I don't know.
And they should be prosecuted.
Well, who are those people? Who are those people?
Okay, okay. Let me just say something. I agree. Nothing would make me happier than seeing all these people in jail. But I learned when I said bad things about the man that attacked me, they arrested me. My point being, rich people, there's one set of justice, and you'll live your life a whole lot better if you accept that the justice system isn't fair.
If it's not Ghislaine and it's not Jeffrey that paid for these crimes, who in that chain should be paying for those crimes? Is it the Attorney General?
Okay, what about the lawyers who probably signed lots of NDAs and all
Alan
kinds of
Dershowitz? Not Alan Dershowitz. Are you saying Alan Dershowitz?
I mean, no, but I mean, he was Jeffrey was entitled to it. No, I meant the lawyers that handled everything from the beginning. All the NDAs and all. I mean, the thing is that the lawyers who cover up crimes don't go to jail. I mean, it's crazy, but our system is a mess. And what everybody involved in this case, instead of, I know that everybody wants to see somebody in jail, but what they should want is to change the laws so that the next time it happens, somebody will be in jail. Because right now, nobody's going to jail. And you can want it and feel it's the right thing, but it's not going to happen.
But if you go up that chain, you land up with the President of the United States probably making that decision, or the Attorney General. At the time, that was Mukasey. Mukasey's not going to jail for that. Neither is Alex Acosta. So, it runs out of people very easily, and you land up with a situation where you've normalized this horrific crime. You've now said it's okay but in general, society has said that human trafficking of these girls is just okay because rich people are going to get away with it.
I don't say it's okay. I said they're not going to jail. They're not the same thing.
I'm not saying you're saying it. I'm saying society has agreed. As we've somehow come to an agreement that there's nothing we can do.
Look at the Me Too movement. One victim, two victims, Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein. That's it.
Oh, there'll be others, of course. Matt Lauer. There'd be. There's a lot of other people. No, they've gone to jail, but they've certainly paid the price for their careers. But there's a lot of people.
Not so many. There was a couple, but you think that every office? Okay, admittedly, in Corona lockdown, every office is fine, but you think that it didn't keep going on and people weren't treated? I can tell you a wild story.
Everything keeps going on. Nothing changes ultimately. People are people, and maybe people are more careful, but it's the same things still happen. Maybe to
they
little
still go on.
Where is Ghislaine now, and how is she doing? Is she on the run, or is she safe? There's a lot of concern around her well-being.
Well, I'm not going to say where she is. She is safe, and she's in hiding but she says she's in hiding, or whatever. The truth is, if the FBI wanted her, they would find her. They don't want her. Okay, I know that's crazy.
It's not crazy. I understand it. I understand why they don't want her.
But there's an immunity agreement which kind of hamstrings them, and basically, she thinks at some point this will die down, and maybe Corona helped it die down. But look, does she stress eat sometimes? Sometimes she does stress eat Oreos, okay? But does she exercise? Does she keep herself busy? Yes.
Is she dating somebody again? Is she still dating?
She has, believe it or not. Men like her. She's a man eater. I don't know. I mean, she's fascinating. She's intelligent. She knows how to run a household.
Is she still? I heard she was with this guy in Boston for a while.
No, she's not with him.
Look, she's a fascinating woman. I think there's very few people that I've encountered in my investigations where I'm like, wow, this was just a contradiction of person, because such a exemplary person because of her skill set, and yet also seems to have got involved with this terrible situation. But I find her incredibly fascinating, and also quite of part of a dynasty there, especially with Maxwell, her father, that changed the world. I don't think you can look at the 1980s, in that incredible time that shifted the world from an era of Cold War to the era we've had since, which has been ultimately, until coronavirus and what have you, a very positive era. You can't say that would have happened without the Maxwells. Robert Maxwell in particular, did that.
They had a front row seat to history.
Behind the scenes, they were operating as agents as well, maybe in a positive sense. That they were doing some good things in connecting people, in networking people, in introducing different people to each other. That helped. That, if you believe these, professors and others, made their dreams come true. That without Jeffrey Epstein's money, the professor at Harvard who got that $7 million donation would not have been able to do everything that he's been able to do scientifically. And you'd probably find examples of that in a lot of places. So, you can't say a person is one thing. And in this case, you certainly can't say that Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine is just that one thing. What do you think are their redeeming qualities? What do you think ultimately for Ghislaine? What do you think is the redeeming part of what she's done in her contribution to life?
I think she and all the Maxwells want to leave the world a better place. Now, they often thought the means justifies the ends. The end. I don't know why, but that was always their philosophy about lots of things. I remember Christine told me that her father founded the soccer team, that he saved family during the war. He founded the Paragon Press. They don't believe that somebody should be their worst moment. And I'm involved in criminal justice reform, and I kind of feel the same way, that you're not your worst moment, okay? She was fun. She was intelligent. They really do work on, Isabel is always helping Israeli high-tech companies. She's always helping charities. She invited me in the middle of this to something for immigrants that her friend was involved in. They really want to help people, okay? How this happened, I really believe it's because of Epstein, okay? That she got caught into this whole mess and couldn't get herself out.
Look,
he beat down her self-confidence, and she didn't think anybody else would want her, and she didn't think that she could do anything on her own. She did try to leave him several times, and he always bought her out of it. He would give her more money or more this or more that.
It sounds like almost like a codependent relationship, but in a way that's very, very difficult to get yourself out of when you're involved in so much activity where there's so much scheming together, then how do you separate that scheming? Because you're so caught up in it. And in fact,
it's an addiction.
It's an addiction.
It's an addiction.
Yeah. It's time for all this stuff to come out. We can't keep harboring all this secrecy and arrangements and agreements with people that we can't explain. People who have cooperation agreements who are stuck in situations like this, we need to hear their story because it's important that people get to know why they did what they did. But these secrets that have kept America, for the last 40 years, I can think of endless incidents that we just don't know the truth about, that we just will never find out the truth about because they've been buried by people who think America can't handle the truth. The only thing America can't handle is the lies. What America really needs ultimately is to understand what happened. We're all grown-ups. We know how to figure it out. We'll understand what happened. And we're probably...
But why? Why do we need to know? Why are we entitled to know?
I have a strong belief that the truth will set you free ultimately, and that as a society, in order to be free, we need to have a lot of truth in our system. And any amount of covering up or creating events where we're not able to ultimately get to the truth or get to the people who might know the truth, it lands up leaving people feeling like they don't have control over their lives or real freedom. And ultimately, the great hope of America is about freedom, and that's why people want to move here. That's why people immigrate here. That's why ultimately I came here, is the hope that you can live life in freedom. And if you feel like stuff is being hidden, manipulated, that your votes aren't really valuable, that there's things going on behind the scenes that impact your life, like a coronavirus response that we're seeing right now, where you can't really take any action because we're just victims of whatever Donald Trump decides to do on any given day, that begins to tear away at your human spirit. Laura, I want to thank you so much. You've been fascinating. I could talk to you for hours. I hope we'll get to talk again. This has been terrific. Have a great night.
Support Narativ's independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative. And check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe and download.